Why does my watercolor painting look so flat while the other artists' watercolor paintings have so much depth in them? Why do the paintings look so beautiful than mine? Does it really make me a bad painter or a bad watercolor artist? In case you've stuck around with these questions that you've been constantly asking yourself, then you found the just right video. Hey, my name is Musfira and I warmly welcome you all to my YouTube channel. In this video, we will be exploring together 5 different watercolor techniques that are widely used by watercolor artists across the world. So now, just in case you're wondering, what's the 6th section for? It is the bonus watercolor technique that I wish you to know, because it's one of the best techniques and really a fun one. So make sure that you watch the video till the end to know what it is, and let us begin. Before further ado, so here I am giving a good spritz to my watercolors because they were dry and dry watercolors don't work. So after giving a good spritz, let us begin with the first technique for today, and that is wet on wet technique. This technique is widely used by watercolor artists across the globe. I think this is one of the most commonly used and most widely known technique as well. In this technique, you wet the surface of the paper, avoiding any puddles, water puddles, and you make sure that your paper has a nice shine and the water is evenly spread on it. And then after wetting your paper, you make sure that your brush is also nicely wet. It does not need to be excessively wet nor too dry. As you can see here in the video, my brush is appropriately wet. Now I will just glide the brush across the page or the section, and you can see the beautiful dreamy effect that you get in the wet and wet technique. This is the reason why a lot of watercolor artists love watercolor, because of the flow of the paint in the wet on wet technique. And yeah, you can use this technique to paint soft clouds, to paint soft reflections in the water bodies like lakes and ponds, etc. So this was all about a first technique in short. Now let us move on to the next technique, and that is wet on dry. The wet and dry technique is slightly different than the wet and wet, because here the paper is completely dry and you paint on the dry paper surface using your wet brush. So here I am loading my brush with nice purple color and making sure that the paper is completely dry and the brush is as wet as I want it to be. Now, as soon as I lay down the wash, you would notice the crisp or the hard edges that I'm achieving here on the second section. That is because the paper surface is completely dry. Unlike the previous one, due to wet paper surface, the paint was moving very nicely and you could achieve the dreamy effect using the previous painting technique. So in this technique here, as you can see, I am struggling a little to cover my entire section, and I'm achieving a little streaky effect of here, which is absolutely amazing to create mountains or trees or grass, and even flat washes for that matter. Apart from this, this technique is also used to create electrical wires. Now let us move on to the third technique, and it is the lifting technique. In this technique, what you do is you paint an area of your painting or your page, and you lift off or you remove off some of the paints. For example, here I am covering my entire section with the colors that I want, and then I will lift off some of the paint using my clean damp brush. Clean damp brush is the key word here, so it is absolutely crucial that you make sure that your brush is damp and not excessively wet. And how do you determine that? Is by gently pressing or folding your bristles of the brush and then seeing if they snap. If they do not snap, then your brush is damp, but if your brush is a little snappy, then your brush has excess water or excessive water for the lifting technique. And then I will use my brush to lift off the paint, and then I'll wash it again and dab it on the tissue and make my brush damp. And that's how I lift my paint using the clean damp brush. Now you can use this technique using a variety of ways, and the one of the ways is where you want crisp edges, so you lift off the paint while you're painting, or the area that you already painted is dry, and you again, like I said, dampen your brush and then lift the paint. But if you wish to achieve soft edges, then you need to work a little faster and lift off the colors while the paper is still wet. Another way is to use the tissue paper by scrunching it up and lifting off the paint to create some wispy clouds. This technique is also useful to create some beautiful textures, which brings us to our fourth technique for today, and that is dry brush or dry brushing, watercolor technique. In this technique, the paper surface remains completely dry and the brush is loaded with watercolors, especially the excess watercolor is removed, and you have to make sure that the brush has enough color but not too much or not too less, otherwise you won't be able to achieve this effect. So here I am trying to load my brush with nice thick color of burnt sienna and making sure that I have a decent amount of colors in my brush's bristle, so that it is easier for me to achieve the dry brush effect. And you need to keep doing it or repeat it until and unless you're satisfied with it. You can always use a tissue paper to check or dab the excess water or paint from your brush. Sometimes artists use more pigment loaded brush than I'm using here on the dry paper surface, but here I am using a damp brush because my brush has excellent water retention capacity and I didn't want to end up having wet and dry technique over here. So what you do here is you load the pigment in your brush and you simply apply it on the dry paper surface, and that's how as you can see, it gives you a nice textured effect over here. This technique is excellent for creating grasses, foreground foliages and lands using nice earthy tones as well, and you can also use this to create highlights on the water. Now let's move on to the fifth technique for today, and that is the glazing technique. In this technique, you let the previous layer completely dry using whether a heat gun or a hair dryer, or you allow it to dry naturally. The key aspect over here is that you let the first or the previous layer completely dry, making sure that it is completely dry and not damp will help you achieve the glazing effect in your paintings. And here I am applying a nice layer of permanent yellow orange, and then I will wait for it to dry completely, and then I will show you what is glazing technique exactly and how it is to be done. Till then, let us move on to the sixth, the final one, and the bonus technique for today, and that is the spattering technique. Yep, the spattering technique is one of the most underrated technique, I guess, but it is really beautiful to achieve textures. You can use it to paint flowers on the foreground. I personally love this technique and I use it to paint starry nights. A lot of artists do. This technique is commonly used to paint snowfall as well, and in this technique you load the brush with the color of your choice and you make sure that the brush has enough color in it, otherwise there will be no spatters in your paintings. You need to make sure that you use the correct size of the brush, otherwise you might end up having two big spatters or two small spatters if you use either a too big size or a too small size of the brush. So that's where you need to be careful. Coming back to our fifth watercolor technique, and that is glazing. So I'm just checking if my layer is completely dry, otherwise I will end up mixing both the colors. And I think my layer is dried well, but not completely, but still I would like to show you the kind of effect glazing has. So here I am placing nice bright red over this permanent yellow orange color from Tuvi Arts. The underpainting over here isn't completely dry, it's like 99% dried and 1% still wet. But as I am always in a hurry and always too excited to show you things, and therefore I went back to layer once again, but this time the water ratio was more and the paint was a little less, as you can see, and therefore the layer beneath the one which I am applying right now is or can be seen through. So this is the beauty of the glazing technique, where you can see through the layer below, and it gives you a nice mix of two different colors, a beautiful blend of it. And this could also be used for various painting various elements, and one of those elements is painting a person wearing spectacles, or elements with lights and shadows. So your paintings probably look flat because you aren't using or applying one of these or any of these techniques. No, it does not make you a bad artist or a bad painter. Your paintings may be bad for you, but for someone else it's a masterpiece. And here is a closer look of each of these techniques. And thank you so much for watching the video. I really suck at voiceovers, and doing a voiceover for this video has been a real struggle for me. So please, I urge and I plead you to support me by liking, sharing and subscribing. And if you really enjoyed it and found this video helpful, do leave your comments or your feedback below in the comment section. And thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye. Oh, I forgot to tell you that I will be painting a landscape using all of these 6 techniques step by step just for you, and therefore I've added this extra section. So stay tuned for another video. Till then, happy painting.